On this edition of Native Report, we travel to the state of Washington and attend the rededication of the Spokane Nation's tribal fish hatchery.
We view the incredible infrared photography of Erv Schleufer.
And we visit the Spokane American Indian Community Center. We also learn something new about healthy living and hear from our elders on this edition of Native Report.
Production of Native Report is made possible by grants from the Shakopee-Mdewakanton Sioux community, the Blandin Foundation, and the Duluth Superior Area Community Foundation.
Welcome to Native Report. I'm Rita Aspinwall.
And I'm Ernie Stevens. It was in 1991 when the Spokane Tribal Hatchery was developed to help mitigate the loss of salmon to the upper Columbia River. The primary objective is to produce kokanee salmon and rainbow trout to create and sustain a harvestable fishery. Join us now as we attend the rededication ceremony of the hatchery. As an eagle flew overhead, the mood at the Spokane Tribal Fish Hatchery was celebratory as the Spokane Nation celebrated 25 years of operation of the hatchery. A new agreement was also signed with the Bonneville Power Administration to support the hatchery for another 20 years.
We just recently successfully renegotiated a long-term O&M agreement with Bonneville Power Administration. So today was a day to kind of commemorate that commitment, to show that we're serious about this program and committing to making sure that it has some longevity to it and that it continues to be a pathway to reconnect our people to the river and the resources that it has. I have 7 full-time Spokane tribal members, all tribal member staff that works here. It's been all tribal members from day one. We were raising fish in this creek before we even had a hatchery to prove that we could do it. It was contentious when the tribe was first negotiating with Bonneville over who would manage the hatchery. We wanted this hatchery built on the reservation and we wanted it ran by tribal members. The hatchery serves a lot of different functions and I'm just this one person. There's a lot of people put their heart and soul in this place. They're all tribal members. And so they have a vested interest and a stronger connection today than they did 25 years ago, as I have.
The ancestral homelands of the Spokane Nation once included the area around the city of Spokane. For generations, the people harvested kokanee salmon and trout that were at one time plentiful in the rivers and lakes that surround the present-day reservation. But that all ended with the construction of dams.
Spokane people were a river people and a salmon people. We sustained off of the salmon. So the salmon came all the way up to our rivers, our creeks, and our falls, and our salmon chiefs would regulate the commerce on the river of the salmon harvest. And so I may be a little bit low on this figure, but about 80% of our sustenance was on the salmon. Our current day reservation is surrounded by 3 bodies of water: the Shimmikin Creek to the east, the Spokane River to the south, and the Columbia River to the west. And so when Coulee Dam was built, it flooded our lands. And some of the elders you've seen today actually had homes along the river, and they had to move from those lands because the dam, the water flooded their lands. And we lost the salmon, we lost the eel. They no longer could make it up over that huge dam. And so because we sustained off of the salmon, that was our life. A lot of our culture and traditions and practices revolved around the salmon. So when you lose something that drastic, you lose your land, people are put in boarding school, your grandparents, their parents were pulled from the home, and you lose your traditional foods. You kind of go through what we call historical trauma, and your people lose what they were.
The hatchery was developed to help mitigate the loss of the resource. and the signing of the renegotiated agreement will ensure there is a fishery for future generations.
Today was a really special event. It was an opportunity for us to come together with the Spokane tribe and celebrate a 25-year partnership around this tribal hatchery. Back in the early 1990s, we worked with the tribe to help actually design and then build and fund this facility. And we've been working with them for years and years to make sure it was well-resourced and operating effectively. And most recently, we renewed our agreement for another 20 years to try to continue that partnership going forward. A big part of what we do, both statutorily and because I think we really believe it's the right thing to do, is to work with the tribes and others in the basin to mitigate the impacts that the dams had on salmon throughout the Columbia River and other species of fish and wildlife, quite frankly. So this partnership with the Spokane tribe is just a perfect example of the kind of work that we do jointly with the tribes to try to restore fish populations, which are of such enormous cultural significance to the tribes, back to the basin. And it's worked quite well here, and we're proud to be part of it.
We need to protect and express our cultural traditions and values behind this place. We can't lose track of that, because all that is a part of the whole big picture when it comes back to reconnecting your identity as a river fishing people. Before Grand Coulee Dam, we wanted for nothing, but after Grand Coulee Dam, we had nothing.
Having something like a fish hatchery come back where we can start to bring the salmon back or bring whatever this fish hatchery back to our people. Some of our elders will tell you, just bring the salmon back and we will heal. So that's why it is so important, because our people, we are part of the land we came from. So our connection to the land, our connection to the water, to the air, to the salmon, and people, and respecting all of that is so important. And as long as we remember that is the way of our ancestors, we accept that, we teach our children, we will continue as a people. I think a long time ago, they thought the solution was to just get rid of us, and by doing that, they put us on reservations and we'd eventually assimilate. Well, we're here, we're strong, and we will continue to be here forever.
Eczema and atopic dermatitis are names for the same skin condition. This is a condition with red, itchy skin and is common in children, but can happen at any age. This is a long-lasting condition that tends to flare and get better periodically. No cure has been found for atopic dermatitis, and the mainstay is preventing and treating flares. Atopic dermatitis is sometimes accompanied by asthma or hay fever. It helps to avoid strong soaps, and liberal use of moisturizers help keep the skin from getting too dry, and there are medicated creams and ointments that work fairly well. Atopic dermatitis symptoms vary from one person to the next, but tend to include dry skin and itching. This can be worse at night and tends to get worse in dry, heated air in the winter. Common places for this are on the hands, feet, ankles, and the insides of the elbows and the backs of the knees. The face and scalp are more commonly affected in infants. Constant scratching can cause thick, cracked, raw, and scaly skin. Atopic dermatitis most commonly presents before age 5 and can sometimes persist for several years or even into adulthood. Sometimes it goes away for years, then flares periodically. No lab tests are needed, and this is diagnosed by a skin exam and history. Atopic dermatitis can sometimes be tough to treat, and it can be frustrating when it doesn't go away. Sometimes multiple treatments are needed. Steroid creams and ointments can help control flares. Chronic use of the stronger steroid creams and ointments can cause thinning of the skin, and these need to be used carefully. There are creams that work on your immune system, and these are sometimes used in patients over age 2. Elidel and Protopic are examples of these medicines. If the skin is open and cracked and weeping, sometimes antibiotic creams or antibiotics by mouth are necessary. For more severe flares, a course of oral steroids might be considered. These are not safe medicines to use long-term, and these are usually given in short courses. There are newer medicines, and these tend to be very expensive and don't have a proven track record yet. Wet dressings can be used with topical steroids and wet bandages, but these are time-consuming to put on and are a fair amount of work. Light therapy works for some people, and atopic dermatitis and other skin conditions will sometimes get better in the summer for this reason. For some people, scratching becomes a habit, and counseling and biofeedback may be necessary. Antihistamines and other medicines to decrease itching may cause drowsiness and might help at night. Using gentle soaps without dyes or perfumes, using a humidifier, taking oatmeal or baking soda baths, and sometimes wearing gloves at night to prevent scratching have all been used to treat atopic dermatitis. Severe cases of atopic dermatitis can lead to depression. Seeing your healthcare provider before it gets to that point is best. Sometimes seeing a dermatologist is indicated, but atopic dermatitis is common and is mostly treated by a regular provider. We're here to help you. Don't forget to call an elder. They've been waiting for your call. I'm Dr. Arnie Vainio, and this is Health Matters.
Photographer Erv Schleufer specializes in what is known as infrared photography, and he views what he does as a hobby. However, the images he captures with a retrofitted digital camera and a light-blocking filter on the flash show that this is more than a hobby. The images he captures are extraordinary.
A most remarkable photography exhibit at the Northwest Museum of Arts and Culture is unlike any other that the museum has had before it. What makes this so special is not what can be seen with the naked eye, but what cannot be seen in ordinary sunlight.
I was curious to see what the invisible world looked like. I got a tribal check, I think, when I was about in 7th grade. $450, I think it was. And so I bought a little Polaroid camera, and I still have some of the pictures at home. As years went by, I just, had junk cameras here and there. And over 20 years ago, I got my first real good camera. In the spring of 2013, I started looking into infrared conversions for cameras. So that July, it'll be 3 years ago, there was a powwow over in Post Falls. I tried to imagine what this regalia would look like in infrared, and I couldn't. I just couldn't wrap my mind around it. I'd looked at infrared for a long time. I'd done some film stuff, some over 20 years ago, and it was very difficult to do, and the results were kind of spotty, but it was still really neat. I went over there and shot about 800 pictures the first day and took them home, and about the 40th picture in, I saw this picture of this little boy, and right then I realized that I was onto something that I had never seen before. This was way beyond anything that I had imagined. One of the things I noticed right from the beginning is kids, their skin is so much thinner that they get out in bright sunlight, and this infrared makes them glow, kind of like a wick down inside of a candle. They don't have just a white color like this wall, they have this translucent look to them. You'll notice that the sun is coming up here, and all of this fringe is white, but the stuff in the shadows turn blue.
For those who are unfamiliar with infrared photography, it is a special type of photography which uses film or sensors sensitive to infrared light. The digital sensor in Erv's camera captures what is beyond the visible spectrum. The images appear spectral, having an almost ghost-like quality. Erv's exhibit is entitled "The Light We Cannot See."
To me, the draw with it is seeing what's in the invisible world. It's normal for me to shoot in 90 minutes, somewhere around 1,000 pictures. I went over to experiment at the July Amish powwow, and that helped open up a door of getting to know so many people. One guy over here in this one picture, there was the last powwow he danced before he passed away. I'm still kind of beside myself about having all this here at the museum, but I still can't compare my experience to how the family must feel about, seeing something like this.
Another way to achieve the infrared effect is through the use of a filter placed over the flash. Erv does do other photography in addition to powwows. However, one thing is certain. Erv has become very knowledgeable about his craft. Yet, even then, he doesn't label what he does as professional.
I did some shoots in the shade where there were some powwows and stuff, and even though there was a lot of bright sunlight coming in from the open walls, the infrared just didn't glow like it would out in the direct sun. And so I thought, well, I need to enhance that light, and did some research and found out that the flash on my camera produces a lot of infrared light. But then the first thought was, I can't go to a powwow and hit these people with hundreds of flashes. I mean, that just wouldn't be right. And then got thinking, if the internal filter in my camera can block the visible light getting to the sensor, why can't I block the visible light coming out of the flash? I read a story about a guy that did that picture of all these kids in a movie theater, and they're wearing the 3D glasses. And I always thought that that picture was illuminated because of the light coming off of the theater screen. But he had figured out how to make some kind of a translucent infrared paint for his light bulbs, and he dipped his light bulbs in this to block all the visible light, and he went in that movie theater and shot that infrared flash picture, and of course, being infrared, nobody saw the flash. It's been around a long time, so I never went into this thinking that, you know, I invented something. I'm just kind of discovering as I go along. This is really weighed heavily over on one side with technology, with a digital camera, with the infrared conversion in the computers and all the software and stuff. And yeah, you got to go out there and point the camera. When you go to these powwows, it's kind of hard to take a bad picture there to begin with. I don't really feel comfortable when people call me a professional, because, you know, usually professionals go to school. So me and school just never jived ever since I was a little kid. So all this stuff I've done on my own. But when you start looking at it like I'm a native, playing with infrared photography, doing a powwow, and making this invisible flash for my camera, it's pretty hard to find somebody else who's doing that.
So you mentioned cultural patrimony. Could you explain that, please?
Cultural patrimony is defined in federal documents as an item unique to I'm paraphrasing, but unique to a tribal group. And so it cannot leave the tribe. It has a purpose, a continued purpose in the ceremonial life of that tribal group. And so the ACWA shield is an item of cultural patrimony. It's still used periodically in our tribe. It has a purpose, and it's still recognized as being an item that is ours.
The American Indian Community Center of Spokane, Washington has been helping the urban Native American community and non-Native families for well over 30 years. They do so by providing a gathering place dedicated to delivering culturally competent social, economic, and vocational services.
The city of Spokane, Washington is home to well over 12,000 urban-based Native Americans representing 234 tribes from across Indian country. To meet the needs of those individuals, the American Indian Community Center of Spokane has been there to assist the community in a number of ways.
Originally, it was kind of like the gathering place for natives in a city, and it still is. People come here, they hang out, they socialize, they know where the Indian Center is, they feel comfortable here. And I just couldn't imagine a place without it, you know, without an Indian Center. Where would they go? They don't like to go to, you know, I'm speaking of native, mostly urban natives, they just don't like to go to other places where, you know, for some reason they just don't feel comfortable. We serve urban Native Americans here in the city. A lot of natives are traveling, you know, mobile, they're coming and going. Studies show that urban Indians are probably the largest, most invisible group of Indians, natives in the country. And a lot of people come in and you can see it, the cultural trauma has carried over for so many generations that they are, feel kind of, well, they're disconnected, especially with their culture, with their community, you know, and so they come here because they feel that connection. A lot of the employees here have been here for a long time, you know. We probably got about 16, maybe 15 and a half, something like that. 3 of them are full-time, the rest are mostly part-time.
The center caters to both the Native and non-Native communities, and it is more than a meeting place. There are a number of social service programs that can be accessed Monday through Friday.
Well, let's see, we got WIOA, we got the workforce, we got family services, we got a visitation program, we got an Indian child welfare coordinator position, food bank, protective payee, general assistance. We work, and the lady from the Bureau just happens to be here today, but we got a person that kind of helps general assistance, you know, applicants. We got the senior lunch. Food bank is another big program that United Way kind of covers the space costs, some of the employment, you know, percentage of the employment people there, and that's open to certain zip code 99202, where we moved from downtown. Looked at an A&A grant, and I thought, you know, let's do a community technology center. And basically what it is just a computer lab, but, you know, we gave it a kind of a fancy, schmancy name, and that was the terms that was kind of going around, was a community technology center. So we wrote, and we got funded. We got funded that year in 2009. We got 15 workstations, all new computer. We got everything new. There was 3 positions out of it. You know, program director. We had an IT instructor, and then an admin assistant. And it's still running today. Our computers are from 2009, so they're getting up there, but they still work, they still operate. It's been a real valuable asset to the community. People use it regularly, every day. And a lot of the guys just come in, you know, they get on Facebook and sit there. But there's folks that come in and they look for work, and that's what the Indian Center is all about, is putting Indians to work.
While Lux and his staff do what they can with the means they have to help others, they're always looking at how they can better help Spokane's urban Native American community.
Most of the real hard to serve natives that come in are in some kind of crisis already. So we just try to stem that crisis and somehow, you know, get them some kind of service. They don't leave here without getting some kind of help. We coordinate a lot with some of the other agencies like Native Project, Native Health primarily, because a lot of the natives go there are homeless, and so they use this as an address. And homelessness is really huge right now. So we kicked it around in one of our meetings. I said, here's an idea. Let's go back to the table. Let's go back to the planning process. Let's develop a comprehensive plan for housing for urban-based natives. We're a real strong, progressive people. We're educated. We have our leaders. We have our cultural leaders, and you know, we're in this whole thing together. Don't leave us out. You know, we're not invisible. We're here to, you know, we're struggling. We're in the same boat. So, you know, If you don't want to partner with us, then at least support us in some way. There's a lot of natives here that are smart, they're educated, they know their people, they know what it takes to serve our people.
The state of Washington is home to 29 native nations, and it was in 1969 that the governor's office established an advisory council to the governor. After 10 years, the council was abolished and replaced by a gubernatorial-appointed assistant for Indian Affairs. Renamed the Governor's Office of Indian Affairs, it has continued to serve as liaison between state and tribal governments in an advisory, resource, consultation, and educational capacity.
For more information about Native Report or the stories we've covered, look for us on the web at nativereport.org and on Facebook.
Thank you for spending this time with your friends and neighbors in Indian Country. I'm Ernie Stevens.
And I'm Rita Aspinwall. Join us next time for another Native Report.
Rita Aspinwall is an enrolled member of the Fond du Lac Band of Lake Superior, Chippewa, and is an ICWA social worker with Fond du Lac Social Services. Ernie Stevens is a member of the Oneida Nation of Wisconsin and is a film and television producer. Production of Native Report is made possible by grants from the Shakopee-Mdewakanton Sioux community, the Blandin Foundation, and the Duluth Superior Area Community Foundation.